Welcome to this RMS Support Center brown bag. Today we'll be reviewing the fixes and updates made in patch release version 392. Before we begin, I'd like to ask TMO if they have anything to add.
Welcome everybody to the brown bag, and point out that we did try to change up things a little bit. We talked about last month. The slides, the release notes were included with the meeting invite. So we are hoping that you got a chance to look at those, and maybe we'll better prepare you to be prepared to ask some questions and maybe dig into things a little more than we have in the past. So hopefully that was helpful for everyone. And with that, I'll turn it back over and we'll get started. Thanks.
These slides were provided previously. They will be provided again after this presentation has concluded, and we'll include some of the discussion points that were discussed that will open the floor up for near the end. Please feel free to type any questions you have in the Q&A section of this WebEx. We do have some RMS Support Center folks on standby to help take care of those and get those answered. Okay, so let's get started. So here are the topics we'll review today. First, we'll review a note on the release and on user access. And then we'll look at fixes and updates made in this patch for finances, administration, imports, and login. So first up is a note on the release, which will occur tomorrow evening. So there were some database changes included in this patch. And due to that, previous RMS patches will be invalidated and will no longer be functional. So all users will be required to get this patch in order for the application to be functional. So please make sure that you grab it whenever possible. And if you encounter any issues, please contact us here at the RMS Support Center Help Desk. That contact information can be found on the references slide of this presentation, along with on the KM portal and the RMS website.
Does this require a new launcher installation?
No, it does not. It's just the regular launcher. So as long as you're running the launcher, it will update automatically.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up, we're going to take a look and quickly review staff records. We've recently noticed an increase in tickets coming in, citing issues with user access to a contract and/or district. So the RMS Support Center cannot grant users access to districts. So this is the role of the corresponding district administrator. And so a couple of things to note here. So that CAC linking, the 10-digit DoD ID must be entered for this to occur, and that will at least enable the user to log in. But also these rights down at the bottom also need to be completed and filled out in order for a user to log in and access all of the areas that they need access to. And we'll take a look at this in the actual application as well. I'll bring up a sample staff record. Everyone is able to see my RMS screen, correct? You can just react in the chat if you would like. Cool. I see some thumbs up. Okay, so here we have a staff record, and as we can see, it's incomplete. The staff record is not linked to an RMS3 login account. There's no CAC linked, and a non-CAC login has not been enabled. Mostly just the boilerplate stuff has been filled out. So this user can't log in and also can't access, obviously, anything within RMS. So if we wanted to link CAC, right here is where we would do that. Again, you will need that 10-digit DoD ID number on the back of the CAC. Oops, excuse me, I should have pressed cancel. And then if you want to enable a non-CAC login, you'll just need the user's email address and enter that here. And once those are complete, the user will at least be able to log in. However, these rights at the bottom still need to be filled out. So I'd like to kind of focus down here on these boxes, sometimes some of this may be easily overlooked. So the district administrator rights, those are pretty straightforward. If you don't select anything and we go back, nothing will have been changed. So if we just go in and select a couple of different boxes, it will change to partial. And then if we went in and selected full, it'll change to full. And then you can also use these checkboxes for just read-only access, district-wide, or just access to summary reports. So I'll go ahead and undo this real quick. And so next we'll look at the office administrator rights. So if we click on show all offices and go into our office, again, if I don't select anything here, nothing will have happened. The list will still be displayed. However, the user will not have any rights granted to them. So what we want to see whenever rights have been granted, I'll just select a couple of boxes, is we want to see this turn blue, and we want this none to change to some sort of signifier for what kind of rights this person has. So we only selected a couple of checkboxes, so it's going to change to partial. And then if we selected full office administrator rights, it will change to full. So like I said, we want to see something on this list turn blue, and we want this none to change to something else to signify that this user does, in fact, have these rights. So I'll undo that as well real quick. And next, we'll look at the contract rights. So it's pretty similar to the office administrator rights. However, you must make a contract user role selection. So if I just kind of overlook this field and then, well, I know they need access to this contract and go back, you'll see that nothing has changed on this list. So that contract user role selection must be made. So I'll go ahead and select that and do the same thing. And again, we've seen this row turn blue, and we've also seen this contract user role listed here as well. That is what we want to see for most of these, is the bar turn blue and something changing over here to show what kind of rights the user has. So I'll clear this selection real quick, and we'll take a look at the district-wide portion of this. So again, a contract user role must be selected. And this can be a little confusing, I think. When you leave there without selecting a contract user role, it kind of looks like, you know, the bars turn blue and it says all contracts. So it kind of looks like the rights were granted to the user. However, that's not the case. A contract user role must be selected for the contract rights. And so we'll go back. And my screen is not updating. 1 second. And there we go. We see the contract user role listed there. That's really what we want to see for the contract rights, is that contract user role listed along with which contracts they have access to. So that was just a quick demo on how to fully complete the staff records so that a user can log in and also access all of the areas that they need to access. Okay, moving on, we'll start taking a look at the fixes and updates made within the actual patch itself. First, we'll look at finances. So here there was an issue occurring with sending data to CFUMs for payments with only refunds. Excuse me, sorry. This issue has been resolved and the data is now sending correctly to CFUMs. And just as a reminder, you can use this logs button at the top right corner of the invoice edit screens to check on the status of a CFUM's payment upload. When you click on that button, this selection view will show. And when you double click on any of the items there, it will pull up a pop-up for listing all of the details of the payment upload. Now we'll look at modifications and changes. Here we had an issue with the calculations within modifications. So when a user would attempt to make multiple changes to quantities in a single change request, the modification cleanse calculation and the BCD item calculation were not matching up, and that was incorrect. Those should match up. So this has also been fixed, and the modification CLIN and BCD items calculations do match as they should when a user is making multiple quantity changes within a single change request. Also, in modifications and changes, there was an issue occurring, another issue occurring, my apologies. As you can see, the incomplete change request 14 up here says that it has an amount of 6.4K, excuse me, and the new change request shows that same amount in the previous amount column, but this change request is incomplete, so that should not be there. And this has been fixed. And as you can see, the incomplete change request amount is no longer listed in this previous amount. So essentially, modifications will no longer consider any modifications or change requests that are incomplete as part of that current modification. Okay, moving on from modifications and changes, we'll start taking a look at some progress payment updates and fixes, starting with this update to the locking mechanism for payments. So when a user tries to open an invoice that is already being edited by another user, they will receive one of these concurrent editing warnings, whether you're in contractor mode or government mode. And it will just notify the user that concurrent editing on an invoice is not allowed. And the module will open, but it'll just open in read only. Also, while the invoice opens as read only, this lock icon will show in the help tile. And so we will provide a demo on that. But before we do, I'd like to also review an update to the district office menu. And it's also in relation to the payment locks. So a new module has been added in the district office menu, and this is for district administrators to have the ability to remove locks on payments if that is deemed necessary. So if, let's say, a user gets disconnected from network access or is just interrupted while they're editing an invoice, the lock on that invoice will become stale, and after 15 minutes of that lock being stale, it will be automatically removed. But let's just say 15 minutes isn't long enough, so you can contact the district administrator and get them to go in there and unlock the payment for you or for the user. So let's take a look at the application for that. So I will be having some assistance on this. And you still have that payment open, correct?
I'm ready to go.
Great. So they're both in this contract, and she has this payment open. So while I'm in government mode, if I try and enter that payment, you'll see that I get the concurrent editing warning and that it's not allowed. Module will be opened in read-only mode. And you'll also see the padlock or the lock icon at the top in the help tile. And in contractor mode, still we're in the same contract. She still has the invoice open. And if I try and view that invoice, again, I'll get the concurrent editing warning and it will open read only and the lock will show in the help tile. And so now we will move on to look at the district office and the new unlock progress payment module. So right here is where all locks for the district will be shown. One thing I want to note here is if you're a district administrator and you've been contacted to remove a lock, please make sure that you are coordinating with whoever is in this lock holder name column for that lock. It is definitely possible that a user could be in more than one contract and more than one invoice. So please make sure you're coordinating with that person and making sure that you're removing the correct lock. We don't want to impact any other invoices that may be impacted.
All right, I'll go ahead and take over while she takes care of that. Give me just 1 second to share my screen. Okay, so this one is, we're going to go backwards just a wee bit. I have the lock for this one, so there's no lock showing up in here. So now I'm going to run over to government mode. All right, so you do see that I do have the lock on both of those invoices. Now let's just say for this testing too, I actually have gotten out of it, but it hasn't been removed within the 15 period time. It's been like 10 minutes and someone needs to get it done. All you have to do is click on this and then choose the delete option, and it's going to tell you it's going to remove in 15 minutes. Can you wait? Otherwise, check with the person. Just say yes and you're good to go. Give it a couple seconds and there it goes. It has been removed, and now users who try and go into that particular one will be able to go in and edit it without having problems. So if we go back over to that one, it's going to take it a couple seconds. Going back over to finances, progress payments. And then when you try to access this, what you will notice is you no longer have the message. And when you go into the invoice right here, you do not have the lock. So you're good to go with that one. All right.
So sticking with progress payments, this issue was occurring whenever a contract did not have a contract settlement date. And so this payment due down here in the payment status section of the screen wasn't showing a date. And this is because the calculation of the final payment date was based on the CFMS sent date instead of the invoice received date. This has been fixed, and the final payment date is now correctly based on the invoice date plus payment days whenever that contract settlement date is not filled in. Okay, and still with progress payments in government mode. So on the right, we can see that the total requested amount for this invoice is about just $200,000, with the additional stored materials at around negative $20,000. So that brings the total requested to $179,000, and this was not showing the same in the obligations tab. So, and that is due to the cumulative stored materials value being included in the same fashion that earnings this pay period is included, which is incorrect. So this has been fixed, and I'm sorry, this is specifically when using the periodic calculation method as well. I forgot to mention that. So this has been fixed, and that method now correctly only uses the pay period earnings to calculate additional earnings. So here you can see that the total earnings are matching with what is on the obligations tab. Okay, still in progress payments in government mode. The issue here was that RMS would not allow payment requests with CLINs set up in CFMS as quantity type CLINs to be uploaded back into CFMS, or not back, but into CFMS. And so that has been corrected as well. And RMS now allows payment requests with quantity type CLINs to be uploaded to CFMS. Okay, sticking with progress payments. So periodically, usually during off hours for the district, CFMS will be shut down for maintenance. And so during this time, if a user tries to send a payment or payments to CFMS while it's down, this error would show in RMS before the application would just crash. And so instead of throwing an error and crashing the application, a pop-up is displayed instead, letting the user know that the connections to CFMS failed and to check on the logs for the CFMS upload using that logs button that I mentioned earlier in the top right corner of the invoice edit screens. Okay, next is another issue with progress payments that affected both government and contractor mode, just sort of in different ways. So this issue was in relation to the discount terms. When they were entered in contractor mode and the payment was completed, the prompt pay report was still not displaying those discount terms correctly. So as you can see, they're entered up here, but in the discount terms it just still shows 0. And also in the government mode view of the invoice, the discount terms were just not displaying either in this initial invoice tab. This has been corrected, and the discount terms now display correctly in the prompt pay report as well as in government mode. And a demo will be provided for this one as well. But before we do that, I'd like to review the next 2 slides and then jump into the demo, and then we'll try and hit 2 birds with 1 demo, basically. So next, I'll also be reviewing this issue in RMS. Whenever the user would check the requested earnings complete checkbox to complete the payment, the user interface was still editable until the view was closed. And that should not be the case. It should be changed to read only. And so that has been fixed. Whenever that checkbox is checked, the user interface will become read only, and all of the fields will be disabled for editing. So let me pull that up. And first, I'll start in contractor mode. So I'll go in and look at this invoice and jump over to the payment POCs tab. And so we've got our discount days and discount percentage filled in. And I'll go ahead and put in some arbitrary dates for the purpose of this test. And when I check this requested earnings complete box, all of these fields should become read only, and I will not be able to edit them. Yes, I want to proceed. And so as you can see, the UI is completely read only. Nothing can be edited or selected, or well, selected maybe, but not edited. And so we'll take a look at the prompt pay report as well and look and see if those discount terms are showing up. And as you can see, they do show up in the report. And then I will get into government mode again. Oops. Go into the same contract. Go into that payment. So as you can see, the discount terms now show up properly in government mode as well. So one thing I want to note about the discount terms here is before you complete the invoice and check that requested earnings complete box, this prompt pay report button may not update with the discount terms before it is completed. So these will show up only after the payment has been completed, after this requested earnings complete checkbox is checked. Okay, moving on from progress payments, we will look at an update made to the contract claims and disputes. So for the REA claim type, an option has been added in the status selection, and that option is partial merit decision issued. So if that's in use by your contract, just know that that option has been added. Okay, and next, moving on from finances, we'll look at contract setup within administration. So here, this is another update. The ability to choose the default payment method for all new payments that are added to the contract can be changed here. This can also be changed within the actual payment still as well within the additional earnings tab, I think. Yes. So let's take a look at how to set this, what to expect, and what can be changed as it relates to this setting. So here I have a different contract pulled up, and so we will look at contract setup within administration, jump over to the payment/modifications tab, and here is that new setting. the default calculation method. So right here, it looks empty, and I mean, it is empty, and it kind of looks like it doesn't default to anything standard or periodic, but it does default to standard. So if we go in and add a payment, and as you can see, I didn't select anything, I didn't change the setting, and we create a payment and jump over to the additional earnings tab, you'll see that it defaults to standard calculation without you having to set that setting in contract setup at all. I'll go ahead and remove this for the purposes of this test. And then I'll go back to contract setup, back to the payment modifications tab, and I'll go ahead and select periodic calculation just to change it from standard. Then I'll go back in and I'll go into a previous payment, and that change in the setting to periodic calculation will not change any previous invoices. So no need to worry about that. And if there were a payment being edited while that setting is changed, that payment will not be impacted by the setting change either. Only new payments after that setting has been changed will be impacted. So when I add a new payment after I've changed it to periodic calculation, go over, and as you can see, the new payment defaulted to periodic calculation because I set it that way in contract setup. Again, you can change this within the actual invoice if needed. So right here, I can just change it back to standard calculation and go back. And if you have any questions about why you would use either of these methods, this screen also gives a pretty good example and definition of each method. So please feel free to review that if you have any questions about it. Okay, and next, moving on from administration and contract setup, we'll look at some fixes and updates made to the import/export module. Starting with an update, so the document package export screens for both government and contractor mode have been updated to include the option to export all QC test documents. Now, there was an issue occurring with the import submittals submodule and routine. When importing submittals using the import submittals submodule, it was only recognizing the FIO or the GA classifications, and therefore was not capturing any of the other classification days to review accurately. So as you can see here, CR is set up for 35 days, yet it shows as 30 days. And so this has been corrected. The days to review for all of the various calculations should now be captured correctly when executing the import submittals routine. So DA is put in at 12, and it shows up in the submittal item correctly as 12 days. Next, we'll look at the login view. So the issue that was occurring here was that when a user had an expired password and attempted to use the change password link, that would cause an account lockout. And so this is due to the change password link not working whenever the password is already expired. The change password link will only be functional with passwords that still work. And so to mitigate this, a change was completed to the pop-up that appears when a user attempts to log in with a password that is expired. The pop-up will now direct the user to use the reset forgotten/expired password instead. So we just tried to make that guidance clearer on what the user needs to do to reset an expired password, an already expired password. And lastly, we have another update. This is more an update for the RMS application itself, but it does relate to the login view. So RMS sessions will now be terminated if they are left idle for more than 6 hours. When the user is logged out, the successful logout details will be shown on the login view, showing the time the user was logged out. So there is a difference between certain timeout messages. So, for example, if a user's server connection was disconnected somehow and it stayed that way for 6 hours, or if a computer is in a hibernation mode, RMS just has a little bit of trouble reading the time and date stamp for situations like that, for specifically the time of the logout. So due to that, when that type of timeout occurs, this session terminated message with the current timestamp will be displayed instead of the timestamp for when the user was actually logged out. And so these, these logout details are new, and they will actually show up whenever you log out naturally as well. So I can demo that part for you. So I'll just open up one of my instances I've been using for this demo and log out. And as you can see, the logout details show up on that screen. All right, and now we are on our references slide, so that concludes our brown bag. Here are some references to some YouTube videos that may be helpful as it relates to finances and import/export module. And I just want to remind everyone again, previous RMS patch release versions will no longer be functional upon the release of this patch, and users will be required to install this patch for RMS to be functional. Some helpful links are also provided down here, the KM portal, where you can find these slides, and also the YouTube channel where this video for this training will be posted. And then also our help desk contact information. So this is going to take you to the Jira help desk. And then if you'd just like to give us a call, here's that phone number. And now we'll open up the floor for any discussion and or questions you all may want to have.
Hey, good afternoon. I have a question. There's a modification where you can send deductive invoices to CFOs. Can you elaborate on that? And the reason why I asked that is because we have a case where for a reason that I'm not going to get into details, the contractor got overpaid, but now we have to basically bill the contractor, or at least put it on record to discount that from the accruals. Is that something that can be done with this modification that is about to be put in?
Are you referring to the message with CFMs being down when trying to send payments to CFMs being related to what you're having an issue with?
Correct. The payment was issued, without getting into much details, it was issued because of a survey that later got corrected. They got slightly overpaid. It's not much, but still they got overpaid. Obviously, we can go one of two ways. We can do the deduction on the next payment, or if this implemented change is something that it's possible and recommended. Basically, if you can submit a negative payment to CFOs, is that something that can be done? I'm sorry if the question sounds dumb. I just didn't.
No, that's okay. For your specific instance, it would be best if you deduct it on the next payment. The part that we've added to RMS is for when you're doing refunds or retainage only, and those kind of negative payments.
Okay, perfect. Now I understand it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you so much.
I had first question. Do the interest payments show up in RMS? Because our field personnel for Bluestone, they try to figure out why we are over budget when the interest payments show up. And I don't put them in there. I'm assuming that RM is doing that. How's that work?
Yeah. When a payment is late and you're charged interest, that does not come through RMS. That is specifically done through CFMs, and that information is not back coded into RMS.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Are there questions that we didn't answer in the chat? All right, I do not see any other questions, and I have not heard anything else. So unless anybody has any other questions, I'm going to turn it over to the TMO to close us out.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I think that concludes this session. Appreciate everyone logging in and listening in. The YouTube video of the session will be up here in a few days, and we'll look to see you all at the next Brown Bag next month. Thank you.